Hello and welcome. Today we're here to talk about understanding the Jing for treating musculoskeletal conditions, presented by David Legge. So I'd now like to introduce our very special guest speaker. David has practiced as an acupuncturist and osteopath for almost 30 years, specialising in the treatment of painful musculoskeletal conditions. David lectures at the University of Western Sydney and has also taught widely in Australia, the USA and Europe, and is just about to embark on another trip to the USA next week. David is the author of the popular textbook Close to the Bone, as pictured there in its original yellow text, and then it's in the bottom left-hand corner. You can see the more recent reprint. He's also the author of Acupuncture Points and Meridians, and today's talk is based on his 2010 book, Jing, Acupuncture Treatment of the muscular system using the meridian sinews. You can see there in the red. It's with great pleasure I introduce to you David Legge.
Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for what I hope is going to be an interesting and instructive look at the Jing. These have been translated variously as tendinomuscular meridians, which was the old terminology that I first learnt at college. Sinew channels is called by Peter Denman. Muscle meridians, muscle conduits, channel sinews. They've always irritated me a little bit as I've specialised in treating musculoskeletal conditions, and this was an aspect of theory that should have meant something to me, but on several rereadings of the initial material I've found that not to be terribly useful, so tended to ignore it pretty much in my practice. And I've worked off different models and systems for most of my working life. But several years ago I did catch this illustration in a book by Thomas Myers called Anatomy Trains that many of you might have come across there, and in it I saw this illustration of one of these trains that he was describing, and it was phenomenally close to the bladder meridian. And see it kind of coming down the side of the foot, up the back of the leg, even having the separate branches running over the ischial tuberosity, up the spine, and even to the extent of having these two extensions of the spinal muscles going up over the top of the head to finish. And I haven't got the picture here of the front of the head, but it finishes exactly where bladder 1, or starts, if you like, exactly where bladder 1 is there. So this is a pretty close representation of the bladder meridian. I contacted him to see whether he had relied on any of the Chinese material, and although he was aware that it existed, he hadn't paid it any attention. In fact, had deliberately stayed away from it. So I was stimulated to explore the system, and like Thomas had stayed away from studying the Chinese system, I didn't further examine his system of anatomy trains until I'd finished my own exploration. The material on the Jing is essentially derived from the chapter 13 in the Ling Shu. There's no mention of them before this, and almost all of the material that has been written since, both in the sort of the classical material and in contemporary literature, reflects very much that same facts that were presented in chapter 13 of the Ling Shu. And to summarize that material, there are 12 Jing, one for each of the main channels. They start at the fingers and toes and run towards the trunk and the head. So to a certain extent they do not reflect the flow of the main meridians. Nowhere does it say they start at the Jing well points. In fact, some of the Jing have multiple, if you like, points of origin. So there's no classical reference to them starting at the Jing well points. They contain areas of convergence or bind, which seem to be where muscles attach to bones or are tethered to bones. There sometimes groups of tendons are tethered to the bones, say around the wrist or the ankle, and these are included in this concept of convergence or bind. They are not connected to the internal organs, and in fact, there's no mention of them being connected to the meridian network as such, in the way that, say, low meridians are connected and part of the meridian network. And that they very clearly are involved in some way with function and the dysfunction in the musculoskeletal system.
I hope you enjoyed this free webinar. Please take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel and please share on social media. The world will be a better place when more people know about the benefits of acupuncture.